good conversation. So
We'll
looking
create
forward to
some magic. Yeah,
it.
for
Yeah.
sure. Well, it's great to meet you, Stephen. Thank you for taking a minute after the program today. I appreciate it.
Yeah, you bet. You bet.
So, as you probably know, I always begin my conversations with COVID. 6 years ago, so many things changed. How did you get through it, and how has it changed the way that you approach things today?
Yeah, it's a great question. And I thought about that having watched a few of your episodes, and a few things came to mind or come to mind. One is at the time I was running a company called the Game Agency. We were about 50 people. I really prided myself and really the organization on our culture, our company culture. Um, so like many companies, when we went remote, it had a huge impact on the business. Had a lot of trust among people, a lot of camaraderie, a lot of collaboration, and a lot of history because a lot of people had been there for years. But interestingly enough, it really impacted our business. And 5 years later, so I should say, since then we sold that business. We basically were acquired by another company and merged into that business. Um, but never went back to in office. And I think it took a toll. And it's one of the things we'll get to, I'm sure, in a little bit in writing this book, as I kind of looked at company cultures and in talking to a number of leaders across the country, I recognize that in-person um, aspect is so critical. On a personal level, uh, I am a father of three, a happy husband and father of three, and no doubt, it impacted our family, my children, probably most of all, and you still see those effects, and it's a darn shame. It really is hard. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's the interesting thing about that time is for adults, we were alive long enough. We had enough mileage and didn't know what a pandemic would be like, but these kids didn't, and they stayed home, and they had the absence of all of that emotional, social activity that needed to keep them growing. It was very, very strange. And I think for them, it's going to take a lot longer to kind of emotionally and mentally get out of it.
Yeah, and it's super sad. And I hope this never happens again in our or their lifetime, or anyone's lifetime.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
knock on
I
wood.
I agree. I second it. So let's get into your work. I want to know to do this. I want you to synthesize your day by getting in front of 13-year-olds at career day and telling them what you do for a living. How do you do that?
Well, good thing. This is good practice because I'm doing a young writers club in 2 or 3 weeks, and so I'll try here, and hopefully I'll be really good by the time I get there.
That's right.
Um, so a lot of what I focus on is helping companies build greater cultures. And so what does that mean? Ultimately, we have employees of any company that come to work typically 40 hours a week. And you want to make sure that those 40 hours are really good for not just the company, but the people who are there. So I work a lot on what I call servant leadership, which is helping leaders and managers serve their people better, as opposed to the other way around. I work on turning managers into coaches. It's not about I'm your manager. It's about how can I help you? Let me coach you along the way. Um, and it's about really helping make sure that there's a connective tissue between what a company says is their purpose or their mission or their vision and what their people are doing on a day-to-day basis. And do the people who really are the engine of the business understand why they're doing it, what they're doing, and what the impact is on the business? So that's a lot of what I do every day.
Yeah. So how did you learn this? How did you learn about a culture or an environment that works, that's a well-oiled machine? How did this happen for you to imbue this onto others?
Yeah. Well, like a lot of people, I I observed certainly the business that I worked in. I observed the managers I had, and I quickly assessed just personally who are the better managers that I experienced who helped me along the way and what they were doing that was so impactful, right? And typically, if they were helping me, they were not just helping me because they like who I am. They're helping me because they have that skill and they're doing that for dozens of people. Um, And so that was the first thing I noticed. And I noticed that early in my career. I still look at my mentor, who's 20 years my senior, who was one of my first bosses. He was the CEO of a decent size public relations firm, a global public relations firm. Um, and you could just see how he treated people, how he really focused on empowering people, focused on trusting people, and versus the type of manager or leader who says it's my way or the highway, right? He basically said, "This is what we want to do. I trust you. Figure out the best way to do it."
Yeah.
And that's when magic happens. So that was the first part. The second part was, you know, for nearly 20 years now, I've run my own business. And, at the height, I've had 40, 50, 60 people working for me at any given time. And I've, through a lot of trial and error, I've figured out what builds a good culture, what makes people happy, what makes people stay, and vice versa, what doesn't, right? And, you know, uh, one of the things I talk about a lot is the fact that I believe business should be played like a video game. And so, what do I mean by that? Um, I, if you think about video games, there's a lot of exploration. There's a lot of trial and error. There's not failure. There's learned opportunities so you don't do something again, right? So that's the first thing. There's a lot of collaboration. There's a lot of feedback. Um, and normally there's a goal that everyone understands and everyone's moving towards, but they can try to do it different ways. And I've seen great organizations along the way who really allow for just that. And I think the more organizations do, the merrier, because the data shows the ones that are really just having a home run success in comparison to their competitors.
So, what did you want to be when you were a kid? When you were in that career day room, what was your dream job?
Well, it's a good question. So, initially, I wanted to be a fashion designer.
Okay.
And if you look at the way I dress, you would probably note that that was not somewhere I was gonna make it. So I thought, I got really into theater, and was doing like a lot of stage managing and directing, and I thought that was really kind of a fun area, and it has certainly a lot of the aspects, right, of thinking about the whole company, the cast and the crew, and making sure that everyone's aligned, everyone understands the vision, everyone understands what success looks like, everyone feels like they're part of that success, right? So that's certainly part of it. Um, and then went on to college and went back, stayed in that kind of artsy fartsy category. Was an art major, art history major, really setting myself up to make no money, and went into advertising and kind of went that creative route. And that was kind of my path into the corporate world. Yeah.
So, take me back to your beginnings. What were these seeds planted, whether it was with your family or examples you saw that gave you this hybrid mix of right and left brain that has allowed you to be successful as a businessman?
Yeah, well, so I should say that I come from a line of entrepreneurs on both sides of my family. I have a lot of creatives on both sides of my family, whether they be people in theater, people in art, people in music, um, uh, and I certainly seen both those aspects. I've watched both my parents who have run their own businesses have success and challenges, right? And I think one of the best things you can do as a parent is share those things in a positive and insightful way with your kids. And my parents certainly did. My father worked in the house, and his employees worked in the house. Maybe five or six people would be there at any given time, and so yeah, I think that just that observation is gives you a real opportunity. I was very lucky to see that and to have and to learn early. And actually, I think about I have three kids today, and two of them could care less about business. My middle guy, I love talking to him about it. He asks the most insightful questions. You can tell this is a kid who, you know, he has it in him to eventually run something. And I love the questions he asks um, because not only are they helping educate him, they're making me think about my business, which is
Yeah.
awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because they're coming from a completely innocent, inexperienced yet. I mean, we're born geniuses and buried idiots. So when you're young, there's an acumen in you that's already just brilliant because you see the world
My
unfiltered.
my only concern with that, Joe, is that I might be really close to my burial then because
Too many walls we put up.
yeah.
So let me ask you this: who was that heroic force, that inspirational person or people that's been in your life that's allowed you to navigate it and evolve to this place where you know what you're doing is your calling?
Yeah, it's a great question. I would say probably my earliest mentor, a guy named Bob Feldman, who ran the PR division of Gray Advertising. He was phenomenal. I was lucky enough while I was there to go to business school at Columbia University and met so many phenomenal people. And to their credit, a lot of those people was what really launched my first business, the game agency, because they gave me opportunities to do some really amazing projects and to move their workforce forward. So that was great. Today, I look at some people in the corporate world. There are a few that I speak about often. So I speak about Gary Ridge. Gary Ridge is the former CEO and chairman emeritus for WD-40. There's some things that he talks about often that really resonate with me. He talks about certainly servant leadership. He talks about the critical aspect of employee engagement, and he does this through through almost quantifying it, right? So he talks often about uh, companies. If you think about having a great mission or vision or purpose, that's really important. Certainly, making sure that you have a great strategy that aligns with that, that's really important. But if you don't have your employees engaged and ready to activate that, it's all for naught, right? And so he often does this quantification of a company that has great scores from one and two, and then horrible scores from number three, meaning employee engagement, and then takes a second scenario where he maybe the first two are a little bit lower but employee engagement is much higher, and if you kind of multiply, you're going to have much better results. So he talks about that. He talks about leadership. He talks about certainly coaches. He says one thing that I love. And sorry, I'll give you one more quote on him and one more quote on
Sure.
someone else that just resonate with me. He talks about at WD-40, his whole approach was making sure that his employees were happy, and the reason he wanted to make them happy was much bigger than their company, because he always says, and I tell him this, I've told him this now a few times, I find this the cheesiest but the most beautiful thing ever, is that happy people make
Yep.
happy families make happy communities make a happy world. And if you think about leaders and kind of saying your job is not just to have a well-oiled and well-running machine in the form of your company, but to have a real impact on society,
Yep.
that changes stuff. The other person that really resonates with me is Bob Chapman from Barry Waymiller, and the thing that he talks about, and if you're not familiar with them, they are a $4 billion manufacturing company that almost no one's heard of, but they have 12,000 employees, and he talks about how every one of his employees is somebody's son or daughter, husband, wife, father, or mother, and how it's his responsibility and the company's responsibility to take care of them for the 40 hours that they are there, because at the end of the day they're going home to those people and they need to be well taken care of while they're gone. And how
Yeah.
beautiful is that, right?
It's
Like, so
yeah.
if all leaders thought that way,
Oh man.
yeah,
We would get to that idyllic place that we dream of. It would be it.
100%.
So when I think about your book, Stickology, and the idea of making customers for life and making employees happy for their careers, I think about Apple and what they've done, how people become lifelong devotees, and
Yep.
how the customer experience is great. You go into the store and there's enthusiasm and intellect and things that are really advantageous. So my question to you is, what was kind of your research and backbone and aim of Stickology?
Yeah. So, well, first of all, I love the fact you even bring up Apple because, if you think about their, if you think about just going back years ago to their Think Different campaign,
Yeah.
right? Their Think Different campaign was focused on marketing, but it focused on honoring individuality, celebrating curiosity, questioning norms, encouraging dissent, expecting breakthrough ideas. And I bring all these up because these are things that I believe, yes, that was external facing, but these are things that leaders should be doing internally, right? Because if you focus on that internally, that's the stuff that empowers your employees. And that's really infectious, right? Because when an employee feels great about it, they feel like a sense of ownership, they feel pride around it, it gets passed right on to the customer. The customer feels, a sense of confidence around the brand, a sense of goodness inside, and a sense of loyalty because they've had a really positive experience. So I wanted to kind of bring that up because I love the fact you brought up Apple because that to me resonates. And there's so many leaders who compartmentalize their departments, right? You have HR over here, you have sales over here, you have marketing over here, but there's so much connective tissue between between all of them
Yeah.
that if they look at the big picture and say we got to all row together, um, the impact is so much greater, right?
Yeah. So let me ask you this. What is your motivation every day to be a part of helping cultures get to where they need to be? Because it's ever evolving. AI is kind of the metaphor for our lives. We are at warp speed. We have Chewbacca screaming over our neck. We're in the Millennium Falcon and all the stars are lines. How do you keep up? How do you do this at a high regard and take care of your soul every day? What is that energy for you?
Well, I'll say this, and this is probably a really bad thing to say, but AI scares the bejesus out of me. It really does. I mean, look, I understand all the value it's going to bring to organizations from a efficiency standpoint, from a possibly even quality standpoint, speed. Uh, but it's taking the human nature out of so many businesses,
Mhm.
right? And so I think part of my mantra is how do we focus as much on our people as possible because I think that's where the soul and the heart of any organization lies. And so that's what I wake up every morning to focus on, right? And I feel like the organizations that do focus on their people, that do focus on their cultures, that do focus on, really having joint success and ongoing reward, those are the ones that are magical places to be. So, yeah.
Yeah. You know, the one thing about getting to our age in life is you think back to when you were a kid. What would that young version of you think about your life if you ran into him? So let's say you did run into the 18-year-old version of you and you had a book and it was kind of a picture book and it was the life that you've lived so far, that you've orchestrated. Would that young version of you believe that all of this happened?
It's a good question. Uh, I I don't know. I wonder. Well, I wonder first of all if the young version would be like impressed, or they'd be like, "Oh, there's so much more to do."
Yeah,
So
right.
I don't know. But but yeah, I hope so. I hope that young version would be inspired. At the end of the day, I feel really lucky because as I look at the employees I've had over the years, and a lot of people who've worked with me or for me, I should say, um, have been there for 10, 15 years. And a lot of them talk about how the cultural aspect is really critical to them as well. Um, and I experienced that growing up in my one of my first jobs, and I wanted to create that. And hopefully, the same way that my mentor helped me identify that, hopefully, I'm helping dozens of people identify that, so that that can kind of continue to be a domino effect out, right?
Yeah. So since you have this level of loving art, especially early on, you've lived next to the epicenter of the world in New York City. What's your favorite museum? What's your favorite place to look at art?
Yeah, it's a good question. So I'm a abstract expressionist lover.
Yep.
And that's why I love the piece right behind you because um, I grew up when I was in college. I curated an exhibit of Willem de Kooning
Yeah.
at my college, and I was lucky enough to do an internship for Allen Stone Gallery, which Allen lived an eclectic life. He was a attorney that while he was in law school and then early on in his career was doing a lot of free work for Willem de Kooning, Klein, Gorky, all those guys, and so he was being paid in art.
Wow.
which amounted to one of the largest collections you can imagine. And after a while, he basically decided, I don't want to be a lawyer anymore, and he quit and he opened up his gallery, and then he told his wife, which is, by the way, the wrong order, I think. But
Right.
but I was exposed probably while yes, I love a lot of the museums. I love going to galleries that I go to a lot of galleries that really focus in abstract expressionism.
Yeah,
So
I do
yeah,
too. I love it. I'm a visual artist. This is one of my originals. So yeah,
beautiful.
yeah, thank you. So let me ask you this. Of everything that you've done, aside from personal, like professionally, what are you the proudest of? What are you the happiest about that your life has turned out to be?
So I love being a dad.
Yeah.
I think that's probably it's something we haven't talked about much, other than we mentioned that I have 3 kids. I I co-authored 2 books with one with each of my 2 boys, which was really fun. And it really fun because you're going through the process of thinking through what's the storyline. You're going through the process of doing all the illustration. You're going through the process of teaching them about the publishing process. You're teaching them. You're including them in certainly the here's some money that you made off of it. Like so, although neither of them made enough money for me to actually uh, pay them without doing it out of pocket. But that's not the point. So like that was a really fun experience. I love theater. I go to I'm very lucky because we're here in New York. My daughter and I go to a show or two a month in the city, and we really love that together. And so I think that the more that you can experience that with your kids, in our case it's the arts. For some people it might be the sports, it might be something else. Really, I'm trying to soak up every moment because I know that it's a minimal window while they're still here.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. So let me ask you this, Stephen. Everyone has a perception of you, family, friends, clients, colleagues, employees, everyone that knows you, but you run the show. What's your perception of you? Who do you think you are?
That's a good question. I try to think of myself as a very low ego individual. I try to think of myself as a creative individual. I feel like I constantly have ideas. I certainly don't have much hesitation to do stuff. I just go for it. Um, but probably the thing that I hope people take away more than anything else is that I'm a kind and caring person.
Yeah.
And you know, our world needs a lot of that. And so that's I'm trying to certainly live by example in the same way that I talk about the importance of that in any environment, company, family, so on and so forth.
So if anybody wants to get a copy of Stickology, they want to hire you, questions, reach out, any of the wonderful work you're doing, where do they go?
You can go well for Stickology. You can go to anywhere books are sold, and it's right now. I was very excited. It got to #1 on Amazon this week, so that was great. You can also reach out to me, stephen.bear@gmail.com, and or go to stephenbear.com.
Okay.
That's BAER. So,
It's easy. I will put this in the show notes. Stephen, what a joy. Thank you, sir. Thank you for your time. Best of luck.
hey, thanks so much, Joe. I really enjoyed the conversation.
Yes, it was wonderful.